And I think we can do that in a rational way as long as people are willing to set aside their political ideology for a short period of time so we can resolve some of these issues. Mr. President, I would yield the floor.
The senior senator from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. President, what is the pending parliamentary business?
S-1392 is pending.
Excuse me?
S-1392 is pending.
Are there any amendments that need to be asked to be laid aside?
No, there are not.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I'm not going to speak on the bill. I'm going to speak from the heart, a heavy heart, because 6 Marylanders died at the Navy Yard on Monday. I join with all Americans in expressing my deepest condolences to all of the families of those killed and injured in the Navy Yard shooting, and to particularly express my condolences to the Maryland families. I want to also thank our first responders, including the local and federal law enforcement officers who were first to arrive at the scene and took control of this terrible, horrific situation. I want to thank the doctors and all of the support staff at MedStar Trauma Center who worked so hard to help the injured and saved lives that day, and every one of those who played such an important role in responding to that emergency. My heart goes out to the victims of the families and to everyone who is mourning the loss of the men and women who died there. This has deeply affected those of us in Maryland, as it has in nearby Virginia and the District of Columbia. But for we in Maryland, this is who we mourn. A cluster of people, the dead, the shooting victims. This is Maryland and Virginia, hands across the Potomac, and we just can't believe it. We think of Kenneth Bernard Proctor. He was 46 years old. He was a civilian utilities foreman at the Navy Yard. He worked for the federal government 20 years. He lives in Charles County, married his high school sweetheart in 1994. They have 2 boys, teenagers. He loved his sons and the Redskins. Then there was Sylvia Frazier, 52 years old. She's a resident of Maryland and one of 7 children. She studied computer information systems at Strayer College. She received an undergraduate and a master's degree in computer information systems. She worked hard to get her education, and she wanted her education to work hard for America. She worked at the Navy Sea Systems Command since 2000, and she worked a few nights a week at the Waldorf as a customer service manager, helping her family, paying off student debt. Sylvia really was a remarkable person. Then there's Frank Kohler. He's 50 years old. He lived in a community called Tall Timbers, Maryland, and we certainly say to Frank he was a tall timber when it came for working for his country. He, too, was a computer specialist. He worked as a contractor for Lockheed Martin. He was a graduate of the Pennsylvania College, where he met his wife, Michelle. He was a president of the Rotary Club and was honored for his Rotary Club's work. You know, down in southern Maryland, in St. Mary's County, they have an oyster festival that's coming up. He held the title King Oyster for his community service in organizing the Rotary Club's annual festival to raise money for the much-needed Rotary Club challengers. He was a great family man and loved by many. There's John Rogers Johnson, a civilian employee for the Navy who lived in Deerwood, Maryland for more than 30 years. He was the father of 4 daughters and a loving grandfather. His 11th grandchild is due in November. Like so many who live in our community, he loved the Redskins. His neighbors described him as smart, always had a smile, and was always there for his neighbor. Then there's Vishnu Pandit, 61 years old. He came from India in his early 20s. He lived with his wife, Anjali in North Potomac, Maryland. He's the father of 2 sons. He is so well liked in his community, and he was known for helping people, and particularly those in the community in Maryland that are part of the Indian heritage community. He was known for talking about job opportunities, educational opportunities, and was a strong advocate for them. He was proud of his heritage from his mother country, but he was proud of being a citizen of the United States of America. Richard Michael Rogel, 52 years old, a father of 3. This guy, though, was a Ravens fan. When Ravens came into Baltimore in #1, he bought season tickets and has owned them for the last 17 years. He grew up in a community called Brooklyn, Maryland, but settled in Carroll County in Westminster. He was a Maryland State Trooper before he came to work in federal service. A great guy and someone who really liked to protect and defend people in many, many ways. And those are the 6, and there are the 13 that died, and there are those that are recovering. It's just a heavy, heavy heart that we have. In the wake of yet another senseless tragedy and mass casualties, I hope we do take an action to end this kind of violence. Senseless acts of violence are taking innocent lives in our communities. I hope we do something about it. There are those who are calling for renewed background checks. I support that. Renewed efforts to get guns out of the hands of dangerous people. I support that. But you know, Mr. President, there's also people who suffer from mental illness. This case is currently under investigation, so I'm not going to comment on the person we know who has done this horrific, horrific act and the struggles that he had with the demons inside of him. I just know we've got to come to grips with problems. Yes, background checks are one thing, but really, this is where I truly agree with the NRA. We've got to do something about mental illness in early detection and early treatment. We mourn for those whose lives we lost on Monday. We mourned for their families, and we hope now that out of this, some positive thing grows. But I want to say to their families, today's not really the day to talk about public policy. What I want to say about these families is the men and women who were at that Navy Yard are federal employees. They work hard every single day. They were proud to work for the United States government. They were proud to do everything from IT service to security service. Some had master's degrees, some had high school educations. Whatever was their education, whatever zip code they came from, they really served one nation and one flag. And I want to, acknowledge their tremendous service to this country. I want to acknowledge the wonderful way that they were involved with their family and their community. And in behalf of all Maryland, I know that Senator Cardin and I wish to express our deepest gratitude to them for their lives and to express our heartfelt sympathy and condolences. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Minnesota.
Mr. President, I first want to thank the Senator from Maryland for beautiful, beautiful remarks on behalf of her constituents and their families. Our thoughts and prayers are with those families, and also her thoughts on some of the policy ramifications that come out of this terrible tragedy. But I thank you for that, and I know you'll stand by those families as you have stood by so many military families in the state of Maryland. Mr. President, I first ask unanimous consent that Senator Brown follow me after my remarks. Mr. President, I rise today in support of the Energy Savings and Industrial Competitiveness Act of 2013. I believe that the beneficial role that energy efficiency improvements can have for consumers and also for industrial competitiveness often gets overlooked in today's debate about energy policy. When I travel around the state, I'm always hearing from businesses and manufacturers about the importance of keeping energy affordable. That's why it's so important that we're having this debate and that we're looking at taking real steps on meaningful energy legislation. This legislation will help consumers save money on the utility bills and help our businesses be more competitive. Minnesota has long been an example of leadership in energy policy with the 25 by 25 renewable energy standard. We also actually, our largest energy provider, Xcel Energy, agreed to a 30% standard by 2020. So we've been one of the leading states in a bipartisan way. This bill was signed by Governor Pawlenty, then Governor Pawlenty, with strong bipartisan support in our state legislature. And I would also say, as a result, among other things, but I will say it certainly hasn't hurt our economy. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates. We're at 5.2%. And it just came out today that the Twin Cities had its biggest year last year of any year in the last 10 years in terms of economic gain. But what many people don't know is that Minnesota is also leading the way with a 1.5% per year energy efficiency standard. Each year our utilities work with consumers and businesses to find ways to save energy and reduce waste through energy efficiency improvements, much like those that are contained in the Shaheen-Portman bill. Mr. President, I believe that we need in all of the above plan to get serious about building a new energy agenda for Minnesota, a plan that helps businesses compete in the global economy, preserves our environment, and restarts the engine that has always kept our economy going forward. That is the engine of innovation. Although senators may differ on the specific details of an all-or-above energy plan, I believe we can find broad agreement that energy efficiency, like you see in this bill, must be the part of any plan. Senators Shaheen and Portman have produced a very good bill that I strongly support. But they also know that there are a number of good ideas, many of them bipartisan, that promote energy efficiency, and I thank them for the opportunity to build on their legislation to boost energy efficiency. Mr. President, one goal that I share with my friend and colleague from North Dakota, Senator Hoeven, was to find new opportunities to engage the nonprofit community in making energy efficiency improvements. I spoke briefly on the Senate floor earlier in the week about this important issue. When faced with the choice, nonprofits, including hospitals, schools, faith-based organizations, and youth centers, often make the decision to delay or forego improvements in energy efficiency to help stretch budgets so they can perform their mission to serve more people. But we also know that investing in energy efficiency improvements today can lead to savings over time that go beyond the initial cost of investment. So it is a difficult question. Should we do a little less for a year or two so that upgrades can be made, if you're a nonprofit, to your heating system, so that you can use the long-term savings in the end to help people? That's why I introduced the Nonprofit Energy Efficiency Act as an amendment with Senator Hoeven, and we have the support of Senators Blunt, Pryor, Risch, Schatz, and Stabenow. Our amendment, which is fully offset, would provide $10 million each year for the next 5 years to create a pilot grant program so that nonprofits can save through energy efficiency. We work with stakeholders to ensure that grants will achieve significant amounts of energy savings and are done in a cost-effective manner. The grants would require a 50% match so that there is complete buy-in from the nonprofits, and grants would also be capped at $200,000. Our amendment has the support of many groups, including the National Council of Churches, the YMCA, the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations, and Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that these letters of support for the Nonprofit Energy Efficiency Act be included in the record.
Objection.
Mr. President, I want to again thank Chairman Wyden, Ranking Member Murkowski, as well as Senator Shaheen and Portman for their tireless work on this bill. And I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. I want to raise another important energy issue that I've worked on this year that impacts nearly every family, business, and industry in America. That's the price of gasoline. This past May in Minnesota, in just 1 week, we saw gas prices spike 40 cents higher per gallon and over 80 cents higher in just 1 month. We actually had higher gas prices than Hawaii at one point. I noticed my colleague from Hawaii is on the floor. We know that this sharp spike in prices was caused when a number of refineries, including those in Illinois and Indiana, that serve Minnesota and the region went offline for both scheduled and unscheduled maintenance. I understand the need to adjust and to make those necessary repairs, but scheduled routine maintenance should not be an excuse for major gas shortages and steep price spikes. Think about it. It's scheduled. There has to be a way to stagger the scheduling so people don't suddenly see 80 cents a gallon price increases. Gas prices in Minnesota have subsided after setting records this spring of over $4.25 a gallon, but we know refinery outages will continue to have significant impacts, disrupting commerce and hurting consumers, small businesses, and farmers if we don't act. That's why I introduced the Gas Price and Refinery Capacity Relief Act of 2013, again with Senator Hoeven, Franken, and Durbin. Our bill requires that refineries give advanced warning of any planned outage and immediate notification for any planned outage. This information would serve as an early warning system because, by the way, they know years in advance when they're going to do this scheduled maintenance, which protects consumers from paying the price at the pump when there are production problems within the refining industry. With more transparency and more lead time, fuel retailers will have the opportunity to purchase fuel at prices that better reflect the underlying costs of crude oil and better reflect supply and demand across the country. Because when we had this recent increase, you couldn't explain it by supply and demand. We had ample supplies. Demand was down. The only reason that we could find, besides perhaps speculation, was these refineries that had planned closures. All we're trying to do is create an early warning system, and I appreciate the bipartisan support for this bill. I also thank Chairman Wyden for holding a hearing on this issue in July. Although this amendment looks like it will not come up for a vote at this time, as this bill is being considered, I look forward to continue to working on this bill and this issue to get it before the Senate. Mr. President, one last thing. Most people wouldn't tie the last issue I wish to discuss today to energy policy, but it is actually intimately involved. Just ask any power company or power construction crew across the country, or even operators of things like ice skating rinks in Minnesota, and you will quickly learn about the growing national problem of metal theft. I have filed my bipartisan bill, the Metal Theft Prevention Act, to the Energy Efficiency Bill to bring attention to the metal theft issue. I introduced it last February with Senators Graham, Schumer, Coons, and Hoeven. The bill is the much-needed federal response to the increasingly pervasive and damaging crime of metal theft. Metal theft has jumped more than 80% in recent years, hurting businesses and threatening public safety in communities across the country. Metal theft is a major threat to American businesses. In a recent study, the U.S. Department of Energy found that the total value of damages to industries affected by the theft of copper wire alone is approximately $1 billion every year. Now, why is that? They're just taking a wire, right? When they take those wires, it sometimes destroys an entire system that's hooked into those wires, not to mention the danger that workers face, as we've already seen houses that have exploded across the country. Copper thieves have targeted construction sites, power and phone lines, retail stores, and vacant houses. They've caused explosions in vacant buildings by stealing metal from gas lines, and they've caused blackouts by stealing copper wiring from streetlights and electrical substations. These are even taking brass stars from veterans' graves. On Memorial Day in 2012, thieves stole more than 200 bronze star markers from veterans' graves in the state of Minnesota. This sounds like a joke. It isn't. That is how valuable this metal has become, so they will go extreme to just take that metal to sell it. In another case, it shows just how dangerous metal theft can be. Georgia Power was having a huge problem with thieves targeting a substation that feeds the entire Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport, one of the busiest airports in the world. The airport was getting hit 2 to 3 times a week, and surveillance didn't lead to any arrests. Last winter, at a recreation center in St. Paul, thieves stole $20,000 worth of pipe from an outdoor ice rink, causing the center to close. This rise in incidences of metal theft across the country underscores the need for federal action. Our Metal Theft Prevention Act will help combat this growing problem by putting modest record-keeping requirements into the recyclers who buy scrap metal, limiting the value of cash transactions, simply requiring that a check be written so that we can track who is actually selling this metal to scrap metal dealers. The amendment also makes it a federal crime to steal metal from critical infrastructure and directs the U.S. Sentencing Commission to review relevant penalties. The amendment respects state law. Our intention is not to preempt state laws, so if a state already has laws on the books regarding metal theft, they would not apply federal law. I realize that the majority of cases will likely continue to be handled by state and local law enforcement, but the federal government needs to be a strong partner, and the Metal Theft Prevention Act will send a clear message that metal theft is a serious crime. Listen to us endorse this bill, And then you will remember this when a major incident happens, because it will. It has been endorsed by the National Rural Electrical Co-ops, the American Public Power Association, the American Supply, Edison Electric Institute, National Electrical Contractors, National Association of Home Builders, National Retail Federation, U.S. Telecom Association, major cities' police chiefs, major county sheriffs, national sheriffs, Fraternal Order of Police, and the National Association of Police Organizations. We need to get this bill done. I would love to just bring this bill to the Senate after I've gotten it through the committee already in Judiciary unanimously, but there are people that are still holding it up. Again, I commend Senator Shaheen and Senator Portman on their legislation to encourage energy efficiency as we work forward with this bill in the future. I hope that these amendments will be part of it. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor. And I see that Senator Brown is here. Thank you.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Ohio.
Thanks, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to speak as a morning business for up to 10 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, and I thank the senior senator from Minnesota for her words and especially her work on this energy bill and on consumer issues that she's made a real name in this body in her work. President, I rise today to discuss the most significant reform to our nation's health policy in decades. The health law, as we know, the Affordable Care Act, is a result of extensive policy discussions, late-night deliberations, 400 amendments that we considered in the Health, Education, Labor, Pension Committee, more than 100 of those amendments that we adopted coming from Republican ideas and Republican senators. There's a reason that people across the country, mothers and fathers and students and faith leaders and business owners and workers, are paying attention. It's because the law benefits all Americans, a wide range of Americans, and especially in my home state, which I'll discuss. More than 900,000 people in Ohio will be eligible for financial assistance to buy coverage that provides good coverage, to buy insurance that provides good coverage at a price they can afford. Ohioans suffering from pre-existing conditions will no longer be denied coverage or charged higher premiums. Young Ohioans stay on their parents' plan until the age of 26, giving them a chance to finish school and secure a job that provides coverage. Those with the greatest need will get the greatest help. For years, we've heard countless stories, story after story after story, of Americans frustrated by and failed by our health system. Last fall, my wife Connie was waiting in line at the local drugstore in an affluent community outside of Cleveland. The woman in front of her was, for all intents and purposes, negotiating price with the pharmacist to save money. "What if I cut my pill in half and then take it twice a day?" she asked. The very understanding pharmacist told her the doctor wanted her to take her full medication twice a day. "But isn't it better, since I can't afford this, to take half a pill twice a day than the whole pill just once?" she asked. After the woman had left, my wife said, "How often does this happen?" The pharmacist said, every day, all day." But the tide's turning. There's hope as we start to see the health law take effect. I hear from constituents at roundtables, in restaurants, and letters and tweets and emails about their concerns for their family's health. A woman in Cuyahoga Falls, a community near Akron, explained to me she recently graduated from law school. She's a type 1 diabetic. Without the health care law, she would have been paying out of pocket for extremely costly, life-saving medication because she just couldn't afford it on her own. "I can imagine," she said, "there are many Ohioans like me, working hard for my future but finding myself in a tough financial spot while still needing to care for my demanding health needs." Health care enrollment marks a milestone for millions of Ohioans, including myself. 20 years ago, I was running for Congress and made a promise in 1992 that I would not accept congressional health care. I'd pay my own health insurance until similar coverage was available to all Americans. I did that for well over a decade. I can now say I'll be enrolling in the health care marketplace alongside hundreds of thousands of people from Ohio. While millions will be able to enroll in benefits beginning in less than 2 weeks, the health law has already provided measurable benefits. Let me share with you how Ohioans are already helped from provisions in this law signed by the President 3 years ago. 97,000 young adults are now able to stay on their parents' health insurance until their 26th birthday. We're closing the donut hole. The senator from Pennsylvania mentioned what it means in his state. Similar numbers in Ohio. Closing the donut hole for seniors' prescription drugs, saving Ohioans an average of $774 a year on medication benefits. 6,300 Ohioans received rebates from their insurance companies because those companies failed to follow federal law, new federal law, that required them to spend at least 80 to 85%, depending on the kind of insurance, of their premium dollars on health care. In other words, if these companies spend more than 15% of your dollar that you've paid to these insurance companies on marketing, on executive salaries, on various kinds of administrative expenses, they owe you money back because not a high enough percent, 80 to 85% of your health care dollar was spent on health care itself. 900,000 Ohioans have received free preventive care, no copays, no deductibles. Mostly seniors have gotten tested for osteoporosis and diabetes and all the other kinds of screenings that seniors should get. Children are no longer denied coverage for pre-existing conditions. My wife was diagnosed with asthma at a young age, way before I knew her. Denied, she could not today. She might have been denied coverage today. She is not denied. She and young people like her at that stage in their life can't be denied coverage for pre-existing conditions, asthma, diabetes, cancer, whatever they might have. Soon all Ohioans will have access to quality, affordable health care. 2014 will see all aspects of this health law fully implemented, which will make a huge difference for businesses, especially small businesses, for families, for communities. From Ashtabula to Athens, from Bryan to Bel Air, from Mansfield to Middletown, middle-class families across Ohio have been in the horrible position of paying monthly premiums only to find they were stripped of coverage or found out the coverage was so minimal as to be useless when they become sick. That worry will no longer exist. For students at Ohio State or Worcester or Youngstown State or Xavier, the choice between paying for another semester at school or health insurance won't be the concern it's been for so many years. For Ohioans from Cleveland to Cincinnati, already covered, they can keep their current plan without lifting a finger. The only changes they'll see are new benefits, better protections, and more bang for their buck. For millions in my state, the new law will mean less worry, less anxiety, and more money in their wallets. For some Americans, the health insurance marketplace will lower premiums at least 10% more than previously expected. Work needs to be done. The system's not perfect, but this law is already bringing our health care into the future. It's a forward-looking law. I've been proud to support it. On October 1st, Mr. President, frustrations, worry, and failed health care protections will soon become a thing of the past for millions in my state and tens of millions around the country. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Hawaii.
Mr. President, I want to speak for a few minutes in support of the bill currently before the Senate, S. 1392, the Energy Savings and Industrial Competitiveness Act of 2013. It's taken a long time for this bipartisan legislation to make it to the floor of the Senate, and I commend Senators Shaheen and Portman, as well as Senators Wyden and Murkowski, and all of their staffs for their hard work. Energy efficiency doesn't grab headlines in the same way as fracking or nuclear reactors or even renewable energy policies for wind and solar. But this bill is good, solid policy that will shrink energy bills for families and businesses. It is exactly the kind of legislation the Senate should be working on, and I urge my colleagues to support it. This bill strengthens and updates the voluntary building codes that states and tribes can adopt in order to determine and meet targets for energy efficiency, and continues to strengthen the federal government's efforts to reduce energy use. As the nation's largest energy consumer, the federal government can play a significant role in helping to provide a market for innovation in energy efficient technologies, and in turn reduce our nation's CO2 emissions, while also saving taxpayers money. This is the kind of policy that everyone should be able to agree to. The bill also provides resources to train workers on energy-efficient building design and operation, a crucial component of making sure that advances in energy efficiency translate into real, well-paying jobs. In addition, the bill provides incentives for more energy-efficient manufacturing and the development and deployment of new technologies. Finally, the bill would establish a Supply Star program which will help provide support to companies looking to improve the efficiency of their supply chains. This program could be particularly helpful to Hawaii, where transportation of goods from the mainland and other places can be very costly. While individually these provisions may sound like modest proposals or changes, when taken together, the policies in this bill make significant progress towards reducing energy costs. That's good for consumers and businesses, driving innovation, reducing environmental harm, and positioning the U.S. as a leader in clean energy, technology, and jobs. It goes without saying that the cost of energy is an important consideration for families and businesses across our country. When energy costs go up, they can be a drag on the economy. We see this very clearly in Hawaii, where we are uniquely impacted by the price of oil. In 2011, Hawaii's energy expenditures totaled $7.6 billion, almost equal to 11% of our entire state economy. In addition, no other state uses oil to generate electricity to the extent that we do in Hawaii. As a result, we have electricity prices that average 34 cents per kilowatt hour. That's over 3 times the price on the mainland. Moreover, 96% of the money we spend on energy leaves our islands to buy oil from places outside of Hawaii. That's money that could be better used to create jobs, bolster paychecks, and making investments in Hawaii's future. Obviously, our state's energy security and economic potential is severely undermined by a reliance on fossil fuels. While breaking that reliance is a challenge, it is also an opportunity. Hawaii has set some of the nation's most aggressive goals for generating renewable energy and improving energy efficiency. We're working to show that renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies aren't just good for the environment, they can be an engine for economic growth and innovation. That's what makes the Energy Savings and Industrial Competitiveness Act such an important bill. At its core, this legislation is about updating federal energy efficiency policies to better meet the needs of today's marketplace. For example, updating voluntary building codes will give states and tribes the opportunity to reduce their energy use while also giving the private sector signals that there will be demand for innovations. The use of energy savings performance contracts is an example. Energy savings performance contracts are private agreements that make energy and water efficiency retrofits more affordable. A third-party company covers the cost of the upgrade, and it is repaid over time from the resulting savings in energy costs. Thanks to the state of Hawaii's commitment to improving energy efficiency, Hawaii is the nation's #1 user of energy savings performance contracts. In fact, just a few weeks ago, the state of Hawaii was awarded the Energy Services Coalition's Race to the Top Award, which recognizes the state's commitment to pursuing energy savings through performance contracting. And this is the second year in a row that Hawaii has won this award. These are the types of innovative financing models and partnerships that can happen when there is clear, sustained demand for improving energy efficiency. Another thing to keep in mind is that even something as unglamorous sounding as improving building codes or advancing energy efficient construction techniques can have a profound impact on the lives of families across the country. In 2011, Hawaii's first net zero affordable housing community, Kaupuni Village, opened on Oahu. The 19 single-family homes and community center at Kaupuni Village were constructed to maximize energy efficiency and use renewables to achieve net zero energy performance. The development has earned a LEED Platinum status. Each home in the community was designed with optimal building envelope design, high efficiency lighting, natural ventilation, solar water heating, and Energy Star appliances. Kaupuni Village also provides affordable homes to Native Hawaiians, a population that has faced many challenges in achieving independence, home ownership, and economic success. And these homes were completed at an average cost of less than half the median price of sales of homes on Oahu, which are some of the nation's highest home costs. Thanks to technical assistance from the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, this partnership between the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, Hawaiian Electric Company, the State of Hawaii, and private and federal partners is a model for other communities. Homeowners at Kaupuni Village are able to conserve energy and save money by optimizing their high-tech homes, while also maintaining a lifestyle firmly rooted in traditions that go back thousands of years. Homeowner Keali Young described her new life at Kaupuni Village by saying, quote, "We grow our own vegetables, we raise our own freshwater tilapia," she said. "We are passionate about net zero living. There is so much pride in our home and our community. We feel we can be an example to others," end quote. These are the types of stories that I imagine every member of the Senate wants to do all they can to help bring about stories of strong communities, happy, vibrant families, new opportunities that create a bright future. The Energy Savings and Industrial Competitiveness Act is bipartisan legislation that can help to make those stories real for more people in Hawaii and across the country. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this bill. I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Waiting for senators to come to the floor. Senators are working on an energy efficiency bill aimed at helping develop efficient manufacturing technologies. Leaders are meeting off the floor as they try to work out a deal to move forward on the legislation. Meanwhile, in the House members have been advised that the House will reconvene next week if needed to be in session until completing a continuing resolution, even if that means a weekend session. And earlier today, House Speaker John Boehner said that the House will vote on a short-term spending bill this week that would fund government operations and defund the health care law. And at that news conference, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor also said that Republicans would release a plan later in the year to raise the debt ceiling. We'll show you that now.
Well, there you are. You know, the president thinks that American families and small businesses are doing just fine in this economy. Speech after speech is about justifying his failed policies. And one of his biggest failures is adding $6 trillion to the national debt. You know, for decades, Congresses and presidents have used the debt limit for legislation to cut spending, and even President Obama worked with us 2 years ago in the debt limit negotiations to put controls on spending. This year is not going to be any different. We're going to continue to do everything we can to repeal the president's failed health care law. This week, the House will pass a CR that locks the sequester savings in and defunds Obamacare. The president has signed 7 bills over the last 2.5 years to make changes to Obamacare, and I sincerely hope our friends in the Senate have plans to make this an 8th time. The law is a train wreck. The president has protected American big business. It's time to protect American families from this unworkable law.
Good morning. First, I want to express my deepest condolences to the families who have lost a loved one on Monday in the horrific attack on the Navy Yard, just blocks away from Capitol Hill. It is in these tragic moments that we also witness the steel resolve of all those who serve our nation there, as well as the first responders who came to help. Now, we've just come out of our conference and had a very good discussion on our work on a budget measure that will continue our record of reduced government spending and deals head-on with Obamacare. Not since the Korean War has the federal government reduced spending 2 years in a row. We aim to make that happen. And we aim to put a stop to Obamacare before it costs one more job or raises a family's out-of-pocket expenses $1 more. And that fight will continue as we negotiate the debt limit with the President and the Senate. In the coming weeks, we will unveil a plan to extend our nation's ability to borrow while delaying Obamacare and protecting working middle-class families from its horrific effects. Those discussions will also focus on a path forward on tax reform and the Keystone Pipeline and a variety of other measures designed to lower energy prices, simplify our tax system, and get our economy going for the middle-class working people of this country. Together, we House Republicans will not ignore the problem of our debt or the problems facing the working middle class of this country. And so we hope and we ask that this president finally engage with Congress and work with us on behalf of the American families.
We all join with the comments that the leader made on the loss that we saw this Monday. I will tell you, we just walked out of conference, and I noticed all of you stay outside to see what's the feel, what's the motion, what does it look like. I have not watched our conference be so united as we walk into this battle. I think you're going to see a very big excitement coming through this week and next week as well as we move legislation. The excitement is the united conference going after the battle we've always been willing to wage. But now we're going to look forward to the Senate joining with us. The President laid out many times of different portions of his health care bill that's not prepared for the rest of the nation. We think it's time it's delayed. And we think using the President And it's not just us who talk about it, the union leaders as well. He wants to pick just big business to save. We think the individual matters more. And that's what you'll see come forward out of the House.
I'd like to join in offering condolences to the families that lost their loved ones on Monday. Our hearts and our prayers continue to be with them. And it was a terrible day here in our nation's capital. Also on Monday, we heard from the President regarding the economy, and he said that, quote, we need to work together to create jobs, grow our economy, and expand opportunity. And what I'd like to remind the President is that that has been our goal since day one. And it's unfortunate that it is many of the President's policies that are making it harder on Americans all across this country. And we see Americans that continue to have a tough time finding a job in this economy. They're seeing their premiums go up for their health insurance. It's harder at the gas pump. This is the longest, 1,000 days plus, that gas has been over $3 a gallon. First time ever. At the grocery store, it's harder to pay the bills. And the Republicans are focused on policies that will make it easier, that will create a climate, a stronger economy for America, so that people will have an easier time finding a job, paying the bills, and for those that are graduating from college, finding a job. That's our commitment. These are not just numbers, these are real people's lives, and the policies that we debate day in and day out make a difference in people's lives. And we are committed to working with the President, working with the Senate, where we can, to move policies forward that are going to make a positive difference and get people back to work.
The President did say earlier this week that the economy is not where he would like it to be, something that my constituents are very well aware of every time they go to the doctor, go to the grocery store, fill up their automobile with gasoline. It is not where it needs to be. And after 5 years as President, we are hoping that he will turn to Congress and work with us to improve this economy. The unemployment rate was slightly down this month, but it's because people have all but given up looking for work. I think the more important statistic is that the workforce participation rate is the lowest it's been in 35 years, the lowest since 1978. And while we stand ready to work with the President on a number of issues that have been articulated already, on the health care law to Keystone, tax reform is something that those of us on Ways and Means have been working on for several years now. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Every minute we refuse to pursue tax reform, we are incentivizing businesses to take their jobs offshore. That's the wrong answer. We have been working very hard to make life easier for our small businesses by lowering the rates, eliminating the loopholes that only the very wealthy take advantage of. We want to put more money in hardworking American taxpayers' pockets, and so we stand ready to work with the President and hope he will engage at some point in reforming our tax code so we can get this economy moving and the American people back to work.